Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're back on this 2011 Chevy Equinox.
We will be going over the oxygen sensors and the air-fuel ratio sensors. We will be testing them, and we will be creating problems and seeing how they react to them.
All right, so starting off with sensor location, we're going to have our O2 sensor 1 is located before the cat. This is the one we'll be focusing mainly for our testing. So if you guys do not have your own scan tool, you guys can backprobe this middle PCM connector. For sensor 1, it'll be the purple white wire, and for sensor 2, which is post-cat, it'll be the purple wire. Although I recommend against doing this for a concrete diagnosis because you're mostly looking at the PCM interpreting the voltage and how it does that rather than looking at the numerical voltage values themselves. That being said, it can still point you in the right direction in your diagnosis process. Next up, we have the sensor 1 location depicted in this diagram. And next here we have a depiction of the sensor pigtail connector along with wire colors and their respective purpose within the circuit. And then here we have the second sensor, which is located right after the cat, followed by another pigtail diagram with some more wire colors and information at the bottom of the screen. And here is a pinout of the PCM connector. And if you guys do find a faulty O2 sensor, here is the torque spec at the bottom of the screen. Alright, and next up here we have a schematic of the entire system. We'll be focusing on this sensor right here. Feel free to pause and check whatever wire may correspond to your issue that you're having. And with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and begin our testing.
Here we're going to be testing the connector. The pigtail is different than the diagram, however the wires are still the same. So starting off with the pink and black, that is going to be the battery voltage. Next is the purple and white, that is going to be the reference voltage. Next is the tan and white, that is going to be the low reference. And lastly, the gray and white, that is the heater low control. The O2 sensor can only work at a specified temperature range. The pink, black, and gray white wires are for the heater built in the sensor. This allows the sensor to reach that target range quicker.
Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is create an artificial vacuum leak. Currently the vehicle is operating under normal conditions. The top graph is representing the sensor we just showed you and the voltages that it is giving the PCM. And then the other graph is reading the oxygen levels after the catalytic converter. What we want to see is sensor 1 fluctuate up and down and sensor 2 either be on or off. Sensor 2 fluctuating would mean that the catalytic converter is improperly working. What's going to happen is the short term is going to feed into the long term fuel trim here. The short-term fuel trim is the PCM's interpretation of the sensor 1 voltage reading, and the long-term fuel trim is what's stored based on previous trips. So once I unplug that vacuum line, we see the short-term fuel trim shoot up because of the extra air added, and then it's fed into the long-term fuel trim as we see there. And for reference, the higher the number, the leaner the air-fuel mixture is, and the lower the number, the richer the air-fuel mixture is. And the PCM's ideal spot would be at a 0%. And now that it has been a while with the vacuum leak in place, the long-term fuel trim has a stored 18%, and the short-term fuel trim is now happily at its 0% range. So once we take away the air by putting this vacuum line back on, the short-term fuel trim is going to shoot down to a negative 15 to 20. It's going to feed that into the long-term fuel trim until it finds that equilibrium for the short-term to be at a happy place at around 0%. So there we are, shooting down to 15, 20, 25. And as you see the long-term fuel trim going back down towards 0. And the short-term fuel trim is going to sit back at 0 where it likes to be. And that was just a quick demonstration on how the PCM interprets the voltages coming from the O2 sensor and knows how to change the fuel trim based on those numbers. One of the next tests here is going to be us unplugging the injector back there. We're going to see what voltage readings are going to be fed to the PCM, how it interprets that information, and if the car continues to operate. Alright, and there the sensor is unplugged. And now all that's left to do is give it a good 10 to 15 seconds to register the problem that just got introduced to the system and see how it reacts. And so we expect a couple different things to happen here. O2 sensor 1 voltage is going to be much more inconsistent with the fluctuations, along with sensor 2 dipping very slightly in voltage reading. Another thing to look out for is the short-term fuel trim dropping into the negative sometimes because of the unburnt oxygen molecules coming out of combustion chamber 1. Another test we can do to imitate a rich mixture is injecting propane into the intake manifold. In order to do that test with the propane, we're going to switch over to a 2000 Buick LeSabre. However, before doing even that, we found a pretty interesting problem with the vehicle that we thought we might show you guys.
So to give a bit of context around the issue, we hooked up a picoscope in order to get voltage readings. Upon testing, we noticed that it was stuck in the lean voltage range. We then found a vacuum line that was not sealed. Upon sealing the line, the voltage readings went back to their normal range, and we were able to perform the propane test. Upon plugging the line, the voltage spikes up. When releasing, the lean condition reappears, causing the voltage to drop. Here we are preparing the propane test. Not much happens to the voltage reading. This is why we recommend against basing a diagnosis purely on a voltage reading. As you will see, the voltage will stay the same, but the car shuts off due to the interpretation that the PCM has from the minor changes.
What?
Here we are checking for any outstanding O2 sensor codes. We have 2 engine codes. We're going to go ahead and click on it. We're going to click on Codes menu. Then we're going to click Display Codes. Lastly, we're going to click DTC Display. And as we can see, there's a P0351 for malfunction in ignition coil 1 and a P0113 for an intake air temp malfunction. Next, what we are going to do is see what revving the engine will do, followed by unplugging the sensor and seeing how the car reacts. Here, we're going to rev up the throttle, and as you can see, the short and long fuel trims are acting accordingly. Now I'm going to unplug the O2 sensor. It's disconnected.
Alright, and here we are trying to start the vehicle with the O2 sensor unplugged. Looks like it starts right up. So let's dive into some PID readings and see what exactly does the PCM receive when an O2 sensor is unplugged. And if we jump down here to the short and long-term fuel trims, you'll see that it's a steady 0 and a -5. So that is whatever the manufacturer decided is the safest operating parameters for the vehicle. And if we look at the voltages, they actually seem to be very close to their reference voltages, which makes sense because the sensor is currently unplugged. So it is not sending any data to the PCM. And those are some PID readings with the sensor unplugged.
Let's now check and see if any codes were set. Yep, it looks like there's a P0030 for an O2 sensor malfunction. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you learned something new.
Comment any outstanding questions you guys may have, like the video, and don't forget to share and subscribe for more.
Bye-bye.